Sunday friends, wonderful to be with you. It's so great to be with you. We have a great guest today, Dave Mason. And you know, the amazing thing is like we can read. This is like so much a blessing. You know, books before, they were rare and they were expensive. And now they are at the tip of our fingers. So it's really amazing. And Dave Mason has written a book, few books, by the way, but today we are going to speak about The Key of Rain, and it's part of a trilogy. So it's the second book, and there is the first one, which is called The Lamp of Darkness. I tell you, this book are just amazing. I'm going to tell you what the people say about it. A beautiful crafted tale, absolutely a must-read. Breathtaking, incredible, hard to put the book down, this was the same for me. Pure enjoyment, it was the same for me, enlightening insight, and it's like, you know, for me, I was walking in the Shomron, which is Samaria. I was with them, I was with Lev, the boy who is growing. He was young and is getting older in the second book, and it's really wonderful. Dave, thank you for coming.
It is such a pleasure to be back here.
And it's really nice, yes. Dave came already for the first book, and now we're speaking about the second book. So you were born in America, you make Aliyah, you came to Jerusalem, you live in Nachlaot, you have a son. How old is he now?
He's 14 years old.
14 years old, wonderful. Tell us a bit about why, first of all, you wrote the book, and what is the story about?
Okay, so going back, the book started, probably about 12 years ago now.
Wow.
And at the time I was learning about the inner workings of prophecy. I was learning the stories of the part of the Bible that deals with the early prophets, and I loved these stories. And I was learning about how prophecy works.
For me, the interesting thing is to know, why did you write this book? And like, how did you write it? You know, what was the meaning behind you to take it takes a long time to write a book. It's like a baby, just...
It took a very long time to write these books because there's so much research involved. And really, when I started, I didn't look at myself as a writer. In fact, I saw a certain need, and I felt like, wow, this story needs to be told. And as a business person, my first thought was, who can I hire to create that story? I wanted to write a story that was set in the biblical world of the prophets, that made it come alive, that took all of that godly power the prophets had and made it understandable, comprehensible.
Which is totally that, because when I'm reading it, it's like, wow, I'm next to Eliyahu, and I see how he's thinking, and like I see the other prophets, and it's like, it's just amazing. It's like the Bible, like you take some passage of the Bible, and it's like a book, so we are with them for a long time.
Exactly, and it occurred to me that so much of the biblical world is hard for the modern reader to understand, because the Bible itself was written for contemporaries. It didn't have to say, and this is what they ate, and this is what they wore, and this is how they did all their business, because people who lived at the time it was written understood that. But we live in such a different world. Mm-hmm. We've got cell phones and TV shows and all of these things. We eat totally different, we dress totally different, and the Bible isn't going to be filling in all of those gaps. So I wanted to set a book in that biblical world to really make that world come to life and take a number of things that were not obvious to modern readers and put them into the story so that you could immerse yourself in that world, see how people lived in biblical times, and understand nuances of the stories that we probably miss because we're missing a lot of the triggers. We're missing a lot of the data points that would have struck a reader 2,000 years ago but wouldn't strike a reader today.
This is one thing that in your book you are doing description amazing about the Asherah poles, and which is like idolatry, and you read it in the Bible and you don't really know what it is, and suddenly in your book it's like, this was that. So I can see that you've done so much research, and like is bringing the Bible in a new way, and like we can understand, as you say, is like we are with them again.
Absolutely. Idolatry was one of the hardest things for me to really uncover, because if you read, where do I go for research? I go to all these Jewish sources over the thousands of years. But the rabbis who were talking about idolatry, they were talking about it in such a way they wanted to make fun of it. They wanted to put it down. They wanted to belittle it because they didn't want anyone to find it attractive at all. So they'd take all these jibes, all these jabs at idolatry and talk about what idiots were to to worship it. So I had to go in there and I had to say, but for somebody living in biblical times, there was a real draw towards idolatry. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been a problem. So how was it presented then? How did the people, the contemporaries who were feeling drawn towards idolatry, what was their pull towards it? Obviously, it's not, you're not going to find that through all these jabs that the rabbis are taking over the thousands of years. And I had to go back and really uncover what was about it. And so you mentioned Asherah. So Asherah was the fertility goddess, and she was the mother of Baal. Baal was the storm god. And these were the two main idols that Izebel, or Jezebel, as we often translate into English, brought down with her when she married Achav and became the queen of the kingdom of Israel.
And like the description with the tree and all of that is like, you can see a film already with this description. The throne, also the room throne that you are showing is like you can see and you can hear the music. It's just extraordinary. So what was also the role of Ahab? What role did he play in the drought? And how did it finish? This was an interesting concept also, what you were bringing in the book.
So this is a really key point. So we have, the book is set during the drought that Eliyahu, or Elijah, brings against Achav, or as I pronounce it, or Ahab, as people know him in English. And it's a very funny duality, because we tend to look at this situation where we have the righteous prophet versus the evil king. That's kind of a paradigm we know in literature. But there's something very interesting in this biblical story, in that there's a lot to say that the righteous prophet, for all of his righteousness, was wrong about a couple things. And that God wanted him to shift and was dialoguing with him throughout the course of years, trying to get him to shift. And the king, for all of his idolatry and evil, was actually doing some things right, despite that. And we say...
There's still a good Jewish king heart, really.
Yeah, like he really wanted, I believe, he really wanted what was best for the people. And yet he tried to marry together two things that didn't work. He tried to say, you know what, I'm going to try to do what is good for everybody, and you know what, everyone can do what is good for them. So if worshiping God is good for you, if you like that, worship God. And if bowing down to idols is what you want to do, bow down to idols. And we can all live together here, and we can all respect one another. And that was kind of his perspective on it. But he was trapped in the middle between two total fanatics. His wife Jezebel, who wanted to kill all of the prophets of God and totally replace the worship of God with her idols. And Eliyahu on the other side, who wanted to wipe out all idolatry and return the nation just to the belief in God, just to the worship of God. And Elijah brings about this drought in order to try to shift the king, and the kingdom, to shift people away from idolatry.
Which is amazing.
But it doesn't work.
Exactly. And this is what I like also in your book, when you think about it, is like, because, like coming from a Christian world, very often, like we say, righteousness is very important,
Right.
And it is. But we have also a God of mercy. So again, there is a balance between the two things. So you are bringing that also with Eliyahu.
Exactly. There's a famous Jewish saying. So if you look in the first chapter of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, there is one name of God that is used, and it's the name we pronounce it as Elohim. It's the name that connotes the God of justice. And then,
Elohim.
And then in the second chapter, there's another name, one that we don't choose not to pronounce.
Hashem.
And we'll say it as Hashem, even though that's not how it's written. That is the name that connotes God's mercy. And so there's an old saying that says that initially God created the world with the trait of justice, but saw that if we were just strictly if we're strictly judging and we're strictly focused only on justice, the world couldn't stand. We'd destroy each other, we'd destroy the world. So God had to introduce mercy into the world, or else the world wouldn't last. And Eliyahu comes along, and he's so in favor of justice. And he's saying, the Torah says that if you worship idols, you should not get rain. You're worshiping idols, there should be no rain as long as anybody worships idols. He literally brings the world to the brink of destruction, because he's saying, there's still idol worship, there shouldn't be any rain, but the world can't exist without rain. And there needs to be some mercy. There needs to be some chance for us to do better. There needs to be a chance for us to fall down and get ourselves up. And he's not willing to give that type of room.
I know, it's like Eliyahu, Elijah, the strict one. It's very interesting because, even in our life, like personal life, when you go through lives, at the end of the life, people know that mercy is so important.
Yes.
Because if you have only justice, it does not work. You can't. You have to be kind with the people. So there is, like you say, people mellow when they are getting older. No, it's because they know more what is life, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, Eliyahu is very strange amongst the prophets. I mean, he doesn't die. Most prophets get to the end of their lives and die. But God is saying, you know what, you're righteous. You don't deserve death, but you're going to destroy my world. So he sends a chariot of fire down to take him out. He says, you got to leave. You're just going to bring destruction here.
Very, very, very interesting. Yeah, I hope that you enjoy these things because, again, with your books, we're coming into a new universe. And for me, it was really bringing the Bible, looking at it with human eye also, not just I don't know, it brings some humanity. And I think God know our humanity. So you bring that beautifully in the thing. Why also is called, so you are writing 3 books?
No, it's actually, the intention is for it to be 5, actually.
Aha! Oh my gosh.
But these books take me a long time.
Yes.
The first one took 6 years, the second one 4 years.
I know a few people already are waiting for the third one, but we're giving you the time. I know it's hard.
Well, at least I ended, the Key of Rain is an easier ending to live with. The first book, The Lamp of Darkness, ended kind of on a cliffhanger, and it was a little bit cruel to leave people for 4 years with no next book. The Key of Rain, at least there's some resolution at the end, not total, but some resolution at the end of that book.
Yeah. So but it's part of a series which is called The Edge of Prophecy.
Yes.
So can you explain also a bit? Because we are living, a lot of people say we are living in the last days. We can see that it's the 6th millennium coming into maybe the 7th millennium soon. The Messiah is coming. There is a lot of troubles and all of that. So why did you write? Why is it called The Edge of Prophecy?
So from the Jewish standpoint, we don't have prophecy anymore. That it lasted for a certain period of time, and then went away. And I'll save at the end of the 5th book for why it's going away. But to say this was a period of time that we had, and that we don't have anymore. In fact, the age of prophecy sort of gave its way over to the age of wisdom. Wisdom, in a certain degree, replaced prophecy. When prophecy was removed, we had to more use our intellects in order to understand what God wanted. But back then, there was that ability to draw down divine wisdom, divine messages that God would speak through people. And not anybody, but people who worked on themselves, who refined themselves, who went on the path to learn the skills of prophecy. Prophecy was a set of skills that people could learn.
Yes, and you show that very much in the book, which was very interesting, that they had school of prophets.
Yes.
So it wasn't just they were inspired, but there was also a learning process was happening when you're up. So because I know that some Christians will say, but we still have prophecy and God is still speaking. So, but we speak about the different type of prophecy, I think. Do you agree with me? So I like to know, because a lot of Christians will say that God is still speaking and there is still prophecy that they can see fulfilled. So for them, it's a bit what do you mean by what you are saying?
I guess I'd probably say that God is still speaking, but sometimes we lose some of the ability to hear. So we don't say that prophecy is completely dead. We say it's reserved more for children and those who've gone insane, that those are kind of the remnants of prophecy we still have in the world. We say that every parent has prophecy when naming their child. There are little bits of prophecy that we say that still exist. And there are those who believe that as we get towards the end of days, as we get to the times of Mashiach, that prophecy will be returning to us. And somebody told me recently that, we're getting there, that he knows people who are experiencing prophecy again. I haven't met these people, so I don't know if he's right or not. People talk about that. People talk about the return of prophecy. But it's definitely in the Jewish mind, like prophecy was something that was lost for a long time. And there's different debates as to why it was lost. One person, as I bring out in the books, one thing we need for prophecy is to be in a total state of joy, that we need to be happy in order to have prophecy, and that people who are depressed can't reach prophecy, which is why in the beginning of book 1 I bring out, for instance, the story of Jacob. His son Joseph is taken and sold into slavery. Well, Jacob was a prophet and a rich man. Why didn't he prophetically see that his son was a slave and take his money and go redeem him from slavery, go buy him back? Because he was so depressed over the loss of his son, he couldn't tap into that. So there are those who want to say that, it's just the struggles and the exile from Israel, it took us, in Judaism, took us to a place we couldn't reach it anymore.
Okay, which I thought, it's like, okay, we as Christians, we need to be open to these things, because it's like you are speaking about, there is like these two worlds, it's just amazing how God is bringing us, Christian and Jews, together to really receive things from each other.
Absolutely.
And I understand what you're saying is like, you've been so downtrodden that is like, how can you receive something pure? And like sometimes it's like, I see sometimes people also saying, oh, I have like a prophecy, but it's like doom and gloom, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, you might have some feelings of certain things, but again, putting it as a prophecy, you need to watch out, what is really a prophet and what is really, because you can be a prophet. Again, there is a difference between being a prophet and having prophecy.
Exactly.
Like,
and we do say there are other levels of divine communication that are below the levels of prophecy that we still have. Other understandings of why prophecy was lost was that it was connected to idolatry, and that we no longer have that burning desire to be bowing down to, to stones and to idols, and that the two were really two sides of one coin. That we chose to remove that tremendous desire from ourselves for idolatry because it was just destroying us. It was completely getting in our way, but that the very thing that made us so tempted to go after idolatry was this feeling of just tremendous divine energy all around us. And we had to kind of dull our senses for divine energy to get away from that huge desire for idolatry. And that, as a side component, that took away our ability to get into prophecy.
Yeah, and I think what we need to understand, sometime, I had a thought before and I lost it, but it's back now. It's like sometimes we think our way, but we don't know how it was amazing before. Do you understand what I mean? So a lot of things have been lost, but we still have the Torah, we still have the Word, and like we can dig in it, but like we really lost a lot of things, and I think we don't realize that. And we're very happy with the little thing that we have, when no, they had a lot of richness and much more than we're eating sometimes a little piece of bread when they had a feast. Do you understand?
Exactly. So there are 100% aspects of divine communication that we have today. So somebody might experience some of that and feel like, that was a prophecy. But had they had full prophecy, they would have known, oh, that communication I had was much more subdued than the powerful prophecy experience.
That's it. So good. No, because it's important, because it's like sometimes we are like two worlds, and like really there is connection that's happening, because again, it's the time of redemption. We can see steps where we are going towards. Even we've been now here for 10 years, and we can see the difference and, the growing and the people who are discovering a lot of things. If your books involve biblical characters, why did you choose to make the main character fictional? I like this question.
So I really feel like the Bible left Elijah, as a real mystery. And so I didn't want to take this biblical character and make up all of these lines for him and make up all these circumstances for him and say, I'm going to take this mysterious character and make up a whole fictional life for him, because the Bible doesn't give me enough information on Eliyahu to really make a book about him without going totally into fictional realms. So I felt like, I need to be true to these biblical characters, and especially Elijah, especially Eliyahu, and leave him as that strange, mysterious character that he was. So I've made all of my main characters fictional, so that I can have characters who go and explore this world and who interact with all of these big questions in a way that I'm not not kind of running over the biblical story and
Yeah.
changing it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to work within it rather than replace it with my story. So the main character, Lev, is a musician, and as we talked
Yes.
about, prophecy required you to be in a state of joy. So prophets would employ musicians to get them to that state of joy. So as a musician, he had access to the prophets, and also he gets drawn into the capital city where also musicians are required. He has the ability to enter. Musicians can often enter into the back door rather than the front door. He could be a small nobody, but be the fly on the wall who could be part of what is going on in the world.
And you can see him in the throne room. This is like
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
And he has the ability to experience all of this and see what is going on and play a role, because as much as there were like the giant questions that involved the nation, there's also each and every person in the nation had to grapple with who they were going to be in the face of this war that had broken out between the prophets and the queen and her idols. It's like each person had to do a real gut check and say, who am I going to be? What am I going to stand for? So despite the fact that he was just a small player in the big war, he was a very large player in his own personal saga.
And for me also seeing that this fiction is like you can put yourself also with them, because it's not just historical people. There is place for you to be into the story and to be with them and
Exactly.
walking and be with Lev, a beautiful little boy. I mean, not so little, but like young boy.
Right.
And that you see him growing through. And not only that, you can see him thinking, now I have to make choice. What is the right choice that I have to do? And like I have a certain, and you can see him growing, like maturing. And it's like he has more important question. And like, how do I have to behave? And all of that is very, very interesting. So now you wrote 2 books. What is the third one? Can we have a bit of a peek in the third one? And what is the story a bit?
So the third one is going to continue following the biblical story. I'm not going to give too many details at this point about where it's going. But there's going to be a big jump in time. One of the difficulties.
Are we still with Lev?
We're still with Lev.
Okay.
We're with Lev the entire 5 books.
Okay.
But in order to map my story on the biblical story, there were certain time constraints to get to different chunks. So what I wound up doing is kind of condensing the first 2 books into a period, mostly the period around the drought that Eliyahu brought. But then in order to continue the story, I need to then take a big jump forward. So there's going to be a jump. The beginning of book 3 starts with the immediate aftermath of book 2. You know, it's the very next thing that happens is that as we end on book 2 is that Eliyahu goes to Mount Sinai and has a confrontation with God. We see that directly from the Bible, and then there's going to be a period of time. There's going to be a jump forward in the story, and we're going to re-engage in that story with Lev is no longer a boy. He's now a man. He no longer has to step up and play a much different role. And the country is going to face a whole new set of challenges. And anybody who wants to kind of cheat and look ahead can read the biblical story, and you can see that there's war on the horizon. There's more battles on the horizon. There's a lot going on in this continuing conflict, and you could really see that. I think we're going to get more and more into the biblical story as we get into book 3. There's going to be a lot more interaction with the biblical story. Like book 1, really there's a lot of the book 1 and 2 actually, there's really just a few verses here and a few verses there that we're using and we're elucidating them. But we're getting much more into the biblical story in book 3.
Yeah. But it was very good because we needed to know the context and the Shomron, the Samaria, and you walk in the hills and you see the Nahal, you know, the rivers and all of that. So you can be there and you can smell you can smell Israel. You can smell it's wonderful. Do you have a special place to write? Do you understand somehow? Do you have like to have a rite? You know, like you have to go in a special, I don't know. How do you write?
So most of my writing I did in the Beit Midrash, in a yeshiva, in a place of Jewish learning. Like I like being in a place where people are learning Torah. That's really big for me. And other people, like my wife says to me, how can you do that? When she likes to write, she likes to go in quiet. She likes to be in a peaceful place. For anybody who's never seen a Jewish learning environment, it is a loud place. People are yelling at each other. They're arguing. Our whole learning approach is very much trying to unpack things, and there's debate, and it's not quiet, it's not peaceful, but I like that energy. So I like writing my Torah books in that environment.
Very interesting.
For writing some of my non-Torah-oriented books, I'd then pick up and go to the library or elsewhere.
Thank you, Dave, for coming and speaking about your books. And it's just wonderful to be able to really dive into the story of Lev and his 3,000 years ago, in Israel, in Samaria. And I hope that you really enjoy this program. You can go also on our website, israelfirst.org, and see what we are doing. And if you want to look at some more program. And from Dave and from me, bye, and see you next time. Shalom, dear friends, wonderful to be with you. We are going to look more at the Hebrew language today. And it's the Aleph Bet, which starts by the first letter Aleph. The second one is Bet, and after we'll look at the other one. There is 22 letters. They are all very special, and they are called also Ot, because they are like a sign and a wonders. The language is amazing. You can see God's principle in them. And for example, Emet. Emet is the name truth, very important. And when you look at the letters, the first letter is Aleph. The middle letter is Mem, which is very interesting because it's the middle also of the Aleph Bet. And the last letter is Tav, which is also the last letter. Is at the beginning, is at the middle, is at the end. And now it's for us as Christians to really rediscover it and study it because it's very important for us to know the heart of God. So we'll carry on more next week. See you. Bye.